Believe it or not, this is not a still render. This is an interactive architectural visualization in a 1994 program called Lightscape, and we can actually pan around and zoom into this scene because it's a live 3D model. Of course, this wasn't your average program that you could buy on a home computer. This level of 3D graphics in the early 90s required an SGI workstation, in this case a Silicon Graphics Indigo 2 desktop with extreme graphics. This was a high-end Unix workstation with the MIPS processor and 256 megabytes of RAM, and also came with a high price tag. The Indigo 2 Extreme had a starting price of $35,000 just for a base unit, far beyond a typical computer at the time. And Lightscape was one of the programs that SGI heavily promoted in the early 90s as unique to their hardware platform, because not only could Lightscape preview 3D models of buildings and rooms, but it could do so with realistic radiosity lighting baked into the geometry, meaning that instead of a preview looking like this with flat lighting, it could look like this with realistic shadows, soft lights, and objects that reflect off of each other. And it's actually thanks to SGI's promotional activities that we currently have a copy of Lightscape to explore. For a long time, the IRIX version of Lightscape was thought to be missing or incomplete, until it turned out that a demo version existed all along on an SGI Hot Mix CD, and that this demo version is actually just the full program, keyed to a specific tutorial. So we're going to be architects today, and we're going to see what we can make in Lightscape visualization from 1994. So we'll go ahead and launch Lightscape in demonstration mode, and the first thing we'll see is that the full program opens, but we get this little terminal window at the bottom that contains the instructions for getting started. We'll start out by opening a preparation file called gallery.lp, and we'll notice immediately that compared to the finished product, this is kind of an empty room. And if we go and turn on the lighting, there's no shading or lighting yet. So the first thing we're going to do is add some furniture to this room. So we'll go to our blocks menu and load in our example furniture.block. You can think of blocks as kind of Lightscape's furniture set. Each file can contain multiple objects that we can load into a scene. Same thing with our chair as well. In fact, one of the advantages of this is that not only can we move this object independently relative to everything else, but we can also add in another chair without having to go back and reload our block library. So once we have our furniture added, we can go ahead and start to adjust our lights. Now the example already has a couple of overhead and spotlights, and we can access these from the luminaire menu. If we click on one of the lights, we can click the Orient to Point button, and then automatically update it to point at our new furniture set. Once our lighting is ready, the next step is to go into the process menu and select Initiate, which changes this from a preparation file to a solution file. But it's completely dark because the energy hasn't been calculated yet. We have to go again to the process menu and select Start to begin the radiosity rendering. And in just a moment, we'll see the lighting actually start to come in brighter and brighter as it calculates more light bounces. We'll fast forward this a little bit because the actual process can take about 20 minutes in some cases, Although for this one, in a smaller scene, it's closer to 5 to 10 minutes. But check that out. Our scene is now completely lit up. And if we look around, we can see that this isn't just ordinary real-time lighting. There's soft lighting on the frames, there's nice subtle shadows on the floor. We can even go into our view menu and change our mouse mode to zoom so that we can see this in more detail. In fact, you can even see some of the shadows on the chair arms from the being underneath the table. This is really quite astounding for 1994 rendering. But of course, the question is, outside of the tutorial, can we create something on our own? So if we're starting completely from scratch with no example assets and no pre-existing preparation file, the first thing we'll notice trying to create something is that Lightscape only supports the AutoCAD DXF format, intended more for building blueprints and construction models. It doesn't support a lot of modern features or materials. So while we can create low poly assets such as couches and lamps in any modern program, when we import them into Lightscape, they come in as this awkward hot dog colored default, which is just a limitation of AutoCAD and how it does layering. So we have to go in and manually recolor all of the models using Lightscape's material editor. And also adjust the specularity and transparency, which aren't part of the DXF file. But once that's done, we can load in our materials and then save our objects as blocks, just like the default furniture set. We can also set up and import our lights as well, defining the type of lighting that we want as well as the intensity. Lights in Lightscape are also considered blocks, although they have a special luminaire property to them. In fact, even when we import our main sort of set, it too comes in as this awkward hot dog color that we have to go in one by one and remap every material. Once that's done though, we can load our block library in and begin moving in our furniture, starting with the TV table. And then continuing with the television, the couch, the lamp, and so on until we have our scene ready to go. Once everything is loaded and we've defined our lights, there's still no shading ready, so we have to go up to the process menu and hit initiate to turn this into a solution file. And once again, it's going to blank out this existing render with no lighting, so we have to go back to process and hit start to begin. And this one took a little bit longer than the gallery, since it is a more complex set. But once it's done, you can see it's rendered out some nice shadows, especially in the doorway between rooms. We can see a little bit of shadows from the couch and the lamp. Now, I did do a little bit of adjustments off camera and ran the solution again, which is something that you can do if you don't like how a particular light came out. It's very easy to go into the material settings and just make a couple of changes. So here's the final sort of studio apartment space. And I don't know if anybody would actually rent out this apartment, but it's pretty cool. And we can go into our animation menu and actually build a pathway through the living room just by defining keyframes to create sort of a camera path. And once our animation is created, we can go into the image menu to render out our sequence. Rendering in Lightscape is a little bit odd and perhaps not the best compared to a full 3D program. It actually just uses the on-screen frame buffer to draw tiles, so there's not too much of a difference between what's previewed in real time and what gets rendered to an image sequence. In fact, because it's using the frame buffer, this is very error-prone and easy to mess up. If we move something across it, that actually ends up part of the render. But with enough patience and troubleshooting, we can actually render out a full animation sequence of this apartment scene. So one of the elements of vintage CGI that has always really fascinated me are these architectural renderings from the 1990s. These sort of images that you would find on websites and CD-ROMs of buildings that had really good rendering and really good lighting, but were otherwise kind of empty and hollow looking, and maybe a little bit too perfect. It always gave kind of this uncanny feeling, like a space that you were never supposed to be looking at. And the cool part about Lightscape is not only do the spaces, both included in the demo and that you can create on your own, have that sort of uncanny architectural feeling, but it's fully interactive. You can go exploring in these spaces, you can move the camera around. The level of freedom was really just kind of unprecedented. And if you're wondering what happened to Lightscape after 1994, like a lot of programs that started out exclusive to Silicon graphics, it eventually made its way to the PC, before becoming outright acquired by Autodesk at the end of the 1990s. Autodesk positioned it more as a plugin or extension to 3D Studio Max and Viz, before just outright folding the technology into Viz and redirecting people to purchase their own software instead of Lightscape, a typical Autodesk move at the time. The final version was 3.2, released between 1999 and 2000, exclusively for the PC. And we'll actually find in this PC version a very familiar sample tutorial file. It looks like they took the same gallery that was on SGI and just added a nice kind of fancy roof to it. And the rendering process is the same. We can go up to our process menu and initiate it, now with the helpful warning. And when we hit go, it'll recalculate the lighting just like on the SGI version. And even though this is running on a Pentium 4 box that's several orders of magnitude more powerful than the Indigo 2, it still feels like SGI had really high quality rendering, even in comparison to a newer system. if we look at the original gallery, some of these shadows and the lighting just seem to be blended better than what you would get on later Windows systems. But what are your thoughts on this? Which hallway gallery do you think looks better? The SGI version or the later Windows version? Be sure to leave a comment below, and we'll see you next month when we take a look at SGI's early attempt at Internet VRML with Cosmo Worlds. We'll see you then.